Hey there, viewers. Some moments stay with you forever, not because they were powerful, but because they were horrifying. One witness has come forward claiming they saw Oprah perform something unthinkable involving small children, and what they describe? They call it pure evil. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. Her stage, not ours. I didn't really know what I was signing up for when I took the job. It wasn't like I'd planned on working around kids again, not after the last place. But I was behind on rent. My mom needed help with meds, and I figured lights and sound was just lights and sound. You flick a switch, you run a few cues, maybe wear a headset if they're fancy. This gig didn't sound that different when they offered it to me. Said it was a short-term contract, said it was private, said it was for a good cause. I remember those words exactly because the lady on the phone repeated them twice, like she wanted to make sure I believed it. The shuttle picked me up outside an empty strip mall just past Route 71. The van was plain white, no logo. The driver didn't talk, just nodded when I asked if this was for the evening program. I sat in the back with my gear on my lap, watching trees slide by out the window. We drove for maybe an hour, but the route twisted so many times I lost track. Eventually, we stopped in front of what looked like a gated boarding school, but not like any I'd ever seen. There were no signs, just high iron fencing and a gravel driveway that crunched beneath the tires like teeth grinding. The building itself had this weird, fake old look. You know the kind. Railered brick with polished black window frames, a copper archway that was just starting to green, like they wanted it to look older than it was. But everything felt too perfect. The grass was trimmed with military precision, not a single leaf out of place. There were no kids outside, no laughter, no soccer ball half kicked off to the side, just quiet, like the place was on mute. When I got inside, they took my phone, said it was policy, no exceptions. I thought about walking right back out, but the woman who met me, thin, tight smile, badge that just said director, put her hand on my arm and said, "Once you see it, you'll understand." I didn't like how she said it, like I'd already agreed. The theater space was weird. It wasn't like any of the high school auditoriums I'd worked in. It was smaller, for one, with velvet red seats arranged in a perfect semicircle around a stage that was way too polished. The wood gleamed like it had been waxed 5 minutes before we walked in. The curtains were closed, but I could tell they were too thick. They didn't just block light, they swallowed it. The catwalks above were silent. No ropes, no pulley hums. Just a long panel on the back wall that looked like a cross between a breaker box and a touchscreen. The tech booth where I was assigned had one seat, one headset, one main control screen. On the wall beside it, there was a single switch that didn't look like anything I'd seen before. It was glassy, almost like an old radio knob, and it was labeled in a way that made me pause. Observe/repeat. I didn't know what that meant. Still don't. But nobody explained it. They just told me to leave it set to obesity and not to flip it under any circumstances. Their words, not mine. Under any circumstances. When I asked about cue sheets or the audio schedule, the woman blinked slowly and said, "The show is already programmed. You're just here to maintain alignment." That was the first time I heard that word, alignment. I didn't ask more questions, just sat down and started familiarizing myself with the board. The lights were mapped out strange, though. Not by zone or beam angle like normal setups. They were marked by name, or what looked like names. Room 6, shoes, bracelet, she laughs, June. I couldn't tell if those were kids or cues, but every time I moved the cursor over one, a little thumbnail preview came up, like a memory, frozen on a loop. I clicked shoes once and saw a girl spinning in place, barefoot. Her face wasn't visible, just her toes curled in dust. I backed out fast. Then the kids arrived. They were all girls, ages I'd guess from around 7 to maybe 15. dressed in pale uniforms, beige skirts, white tops, blue sashes with no writing. Their hair was done up like they were going on stage right away, all curls and barrettes. But they didn't talk, not even to each other. They walked in rows, and stood on stage like they'd already been told where to go. Nobody needed to direct them. It was like they'd done it before. A lot. The first rehearsal started without any announcement. No call time, no warm-up. The lights just flickered once on their own, and the girls began moving. Not dancing exactly, more like acting out something I didn't recognize. They smiled at odd moments. They turned and reached and paused, all in perfect sync, but I swear it felt hollow, like someone had pressed play on them. I kept waiting for a teacher or director to jump in and call out corrections, but no one did. And then I saw her. One girl in the back row, small, maybe 9 or 10, hair pulled tight into a single braid. She wasn't moving like the others, not entirely. She followed the motions, but something about her timing was off. It was too perfect. No human is that synced, and she was looking straight at me. Not at the booth, not past the lights. At me. She didn't blink. Not once. I thought maybe I'd hit the wrong light cue and the glass was reflecting, so I leaned left. Her eyes followed. I leaned right. Same. Every move I made, she tracked it, like she was waiting or trying to remember me. That night, after the first rehearsal, I asked someone in the hallway what the show was about. A guy from the cleanup crew, maybe mid-30s, quiet. He just shrugged and said, "It's not really a show." Then he looked over his shoulder and added, "They're practicing to remember." I laughed, thinking it was a weird joke, but the look on his face made me stop. He wasn't joking. Later, as I walked back to the dorm room they gave me, it was more like a medical bunk than a real place to sleep. I kept hearing the director's voice echo in my head. The show must not stop for any reason, like a warning. I dreamed about the girl with the braid that night. In the dream, she walked off the stage and into the booth. She sat next to me. I asked her who she was. She didn't answer with words, just handed me a sketchbook full of drawings. All of them showed the same thing. Me, in the booth, flipping a switch, over and over. When I woke up, my hands were sore, like I'd been gripping something all night. When I looked down, I saw a pen still in my fist, and on the sheet next to me, I'd written something, though I didn't remember doing it. Just one line. It wasn't rehearsal, it was memory compliance. I didn't understand it then, not really. But I would understand everything. Too late to do anything about it. Chapter 2. The curtain doesn't rise. It watches. I came in early the next morning. Earlier than they asked. I couldn't sleep anyway. Something about that girl's eyes had stayed with me all night. Not just the way she looked at me, but the way she didn't look away. Like she already knew I'd be back. Like she'd been waiting for me longer than I'd been alive. The theater was dark when I slipped in. No one in the halls yet. No overhead lights. Just the low amber glow from the stage exit signs that painted everything like old film. It should have felt comforting, familiar, but it didn't. It felt like the building was awake before any of us were, and not waiting to be used, just watching. The tech booth door wasn't locked, but it creaked when I pushed it open. I sat back down in the same chair, like nothing had changed, but everything had. I noticed it right away. The monitor wasn't showing the usual menu. Instead, there was a flickering message at the bottom corner. Cycle pending. Adjust parameters. I clicked around trying to make sense of it, but the system didn't respond. It only shifted when I hovered over that same switch again, the one marked Observe/Repeat. My fingers hovered near it. I didn't touch it, but I wanted to. Not out of curiosity, out of something deeper. like it was calling back muscle memory I didn't remember having. Then I saw them, and the post-its. I hadn't noticed them yesterday, not because they weren't there, but because they were blended into the booth's wood paneling, yellowed with age, edges curling like they'd been stuck there years ago and just left. There were dozens of them, tucked into the corners, layered behind the monitor, taped under the console. I started reading them out loud just to ground myself. Don't interrupt cycle 3. Loose shoes equals reset. If she forgets her lines, you remember. Only mirror her if it's day 6. Don't answer when she asks your name. Your voice feeds the scene. Each one made me colder, not because they didn't make sense, but because some part of me understood them anyway. I didn't know what cycle 3 was, but the warning not to interrupt it felt urgent, like a fire alarm I'd been ignoring in my chest. There was one post-it I couldn't read. The ink had been smudged, like someone had tried to erase it, but I could make out the last 2 words. The stage. That's when the lights flickered again. Not all of them, just a single overhead beam that clicked on, slow and deliberate, spotlighting center stage. No cues, no input, no sound. Then the girls filed in. Same uniforms, same silence, like yesterday hadn't ended, like they'd never left. They didn't look at me, none of them, not even her. Instead, they all faced the curtain, not behind it, just the curtain itself. One by one, they started their movements again. No music, no signal. Just a kind of eerie, programmed rhythm. I looked back at the control screen. It didn't show them as individuals. It showed icons, like looping clips. And above them, a message. Cast initialized. Roll memory checked partial. I didn't know what that meant. Midway through what I guess was a warm-up, one of the girls, tall, lanky, with a red band on her wrist, started to falter. At first, I thought she was just off-beat, but then she stumbled, dropped to her knees, hands shaking. No sound came from her mouth, but her face was screaming. I stood halfway up, instinct. I looked around. Nobody else moved. The director was at the edge of the wing, clipboard in hand, unmoved. She didn't even flinch, didn't shout for help, didn't so much as look concerned. And then Oprah entered. No one announced her. She just walked in like she'd always been there, like she'd been sitting in the silence of the curtain, waiting for the cue. She took the center seat in the front row. No escort, no lights on her. She wasn't in glam. She didn't smile. She looked tired, but not weak. More like someone who controlled the temperature of the room just by existing in it. She sat down gently, crossed one leg, rested her elbow on the armrest, and looked at the girl still on the floor. She didn't shout. She didn't comfort. She just said softly, The girl jerked upright. Not like she got up, like she was pulled up by something in her chest. And then she danced, not clumsily, not shakily, with perfection. Every move in sync, every beat timed to silence. Her face blank save for a stretched smile that never matched her eyes. I couldn't look away. In the booth, my monitor adjusted itself. A new line of data blinked on screen. Playback override activated. Manual roll re-entry confirmed. Below that, a question flashed, waiting for input. Did subject resume function? I didn't know what to do. My hand moved on its own. I clicked yes. And just like that, the line disappeared. The performance continued, or rehearsal, or whatever it was. But I couldn't stop staring at that girl, not because of how she moved, but because she was empty now. Whatever was inside her before had been scooped out. She didn't blink. She didn't adjust. Her limbs followed the sequence like she was synced to an external script only she could hear. When the session ended, the curtain didn't close. It watched, hung there, heavy, waiting, like it was gauging our reactions. I stepped away from the board, grabbed my notebook. My hand shook, but I wrote the only sentence I could think of, the only one that made any sense at all in that moment. She didn't get up. The role did. That's when I understood something I wish I never had to understand. That stage wasn't for art. It was for repetition, for memory compliance, for programming something or someone. The curtain didn't rise because it never really closed. It wasn't there to mark beginnings and endings. It was there to hide us from what we already knew, from what we'd agreed to forget. Chapter 3. Choreographed Bruises. It didn't feel like curiosity. It felt more like compulsion, like something was pulling me by the ribs, deeper into a place I wasn't supposed to look at. Every hallway in that building felt like it had too many corners, too many locked doors, too many rooms with no names. And the ones that did have names, well, those were worse. It was after rehearsal. No one told me I could leave, but no one told me to stay either. I waited in the tech booth until the girls were ushered out, silently in their lines, with that same eerie quietness, like they were exiting a church instead of a stage. The lights dimmed by themselves, just like before. No cue, no announcement. The screen in front of me blinked off and displayed one final line in gray letters. Cycle 2 complete, costumes pending. I didn't know what that meant, but I had a feeling it had something to do with where they went next. I packed up slowly, grabbed my notebook, and left the booth. I didn't head for my dorm. I turned the other way, toward backstage, toward the places I wasn't supposed to go. There was a door behind the black velvet curtain, one that didn't have a handle, just a key card scanner. The light on it was red when I got there, but when I stood in front of it, it turned green. No beep, no sound, just unlocked. I don't know how or why. Maybe someone had forgotten to lock it. Maybe someone had wanted me to see. The hallway behind the door was colder, smelled like detergent but not fresh. Like bleach and mildew had been fighting each other for years and no one had ever truly won. The tile was slick under my shoes and the walls were lined with hooks and empty garment bags. I passed a few rooms with flickering nameplates. Storage D, archives, performer intake. Then I saw it. Wardrobe recovery. The words were burned onto a wooden plaque. Not printed, burned, like someone had taken a brand to it. The door creaked as I pushed it open, and what hit me first wasn't the sight. It was the smell. Old sweat. Iron. Something sweet underneath it, almost like syrup, but wrong. Like something pretending to be pleasant. Inside were rows of identical uniforms, same pale skirts, white shirts, and blue sashes I'd seen the girls wear on stage. But these weren't hanging neatly. They were organized by size, tiny ones, medium ones, some so small they looked like they'd fit a toddler, all stacked on racks, labeled not by number, but by names I recognized from the cue screen. And that's when I saw the one that made me stop breathing. He was laid out on a metal table in the center of the room, not hanging, not folded, stained. The blouse had dark blotches around the ribs and shoulder seams. The sash was stiff and crumpled, like it had dried while twisted. But what made my throat close was the tag hanging off the sleeve. A yellow circle, drawn in marker with a simple, smiley face. 2 dots for eyes, 1 curved line for the mouth. Underneath, in small writing, retired. I backed away, bumping into a rolling rack that shifted and made a loud creak. The room didn't echo. It swallowed sound. Nothing bounced. Nothing came back. On the far wall there was a whiteboard. I moved toward it, trying to calm my breathing, and saw rows of names written in fading marker. First names only, but many were underlined, some had question marks. And next to each name was another. Same first name, different handwriting, different slant. I read down the list. Ida, Chloe, Imani, Rachel. Stained names, replaced girls. The date written in the corner, cycle 3 activated. I felt like throwing up. I turned to leave, but something caught my eye in the corner. A stack of old electronics. A TV on a rolling cart, the kind schools used to wheel into classrooms. Next to it, a VHS player, plugged in but not powered on. Above it, a camera mounted on the wall, dusty, still blinking. Below the setup was a single tape, no label, just one word etched into the plastic with a knife or nail. Rehearsal, June 2009. Shouldn't have, but I slid the tape into the deck anyway. Pressed play. The footage crackled for a few seconds before stabilizing. The date stamp flickered in the corner, June 15, 2009. The stage looked the same. Same floor, same curtains, same layout, but the lighting was different. Dimmer, more blue. The girls were smaller, younger, dressed in the same uniforms. They were doing the same choreography I'd watched yesterday, only slower, like they were still learning it. One girl stood out. She wasn't doing it wrong. She was doing it exactly the same way I'd seen it before. Step for step. Her mouth moved with each gesture, counting silently. She moved her hand in the air, paused, turned her head. She had bruises on her legs, her arms, one near her eye. But the instructors, there were 2 in the shot, didn't stop her. They just watched. One took notes. The other stood by the curtain, expression blank. The tape skipped for a second, then resumed. The girl looked straight into the camera, not like she was acting, like she knew I was watching. And then her mouth moved. I rewound, slowed the speed. Her lips said, "Don't let me stay." My throat dried up. I stopped the tape, ejected it. It felt hot in my hand, like it had been baking under a heat lamp. I didn't know where to put it, so I slid it back into the slot and turned off the monitor. My fingers trembled as I backed toward the door. My mind raced. How long had this been happening? How many Lenas, how many Chloes had there been? What does retired mean in this place? I couldn't breathe right. My chest felt like it was full of wet cloth. I rushed back through the hall, past the lockers and the scent of fake sweetness and blood that never quite faded. The light on the exit scanner turned red again after I passed through. When I got back to my room, I didn't unpack. I didn't write anything down. I just sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my hands. They didn't feel like mine, like I was watching someone else sit there. Someone dumber, someone slower, someone who waited too long to ask the right questions. I didn't dream that night, not really. I just saw the girl's face, her bruises, her lips moving, the sound off, the world on mute, her voice stuck behind glass. "Don't let me stay." Faded. I'd already let her. I didn't stop anything. Not the switch, not the rehearsal, not the smiley tag or the tape or the board or the bruises. I just watched it. And now, I wasn't sure if that made me a technician or a replacement. Chapter 4. The Silent Audience. They didn't tell us it was performance day. There wasn't an announcement or a memo or even a shift in tone, but I could feel it the second I woke up. Something in the air had gone still. Not quiet, still. Like the building was holding its breath. My dorm light didn't come on when I flipped the switch. The overhead buzz I was used to, gone. Even the hum of the hallway vents was missing, like the whole place had gone into pause mode, waiting for the next command. I followed the path I always did, down the hallway past the staff lounge no one ever used, through the double doors behind the stage. But this time the velvet curtain was already drawn back, and the house lights were up. The seats were full. Every single chair in the small auditorium was occupied, each one by someone dressed clean and dark. Suits, sunglasses, scarves, gloved hands. None of them had phones. None of them were talking. No murmurs, no throat clearing. Just 100 or more sets of eyes, all fixed forward like mannequins staged for a catalog shoot. No one blinked. No one adjusted their jackets. And no one looked at me when I entered the tech booth. That should have been my first warning. The second was the cue monitor, which had updated itself sometime during the night. The main screen now said, Event, Memory Casting, Cycle, 5, Active. Showtime, 8:33 a.m. No interruption. A late lock. It was already 8:29. I sat down. I didn't feel my body as I moved. I wasn't cold or hot, just hollowed out. I rested my hand near the switch. Observe/repeat. But didn't touch it. It didn't matter anyway. It was already set to observe, and something told me I wasn't in control of that setting anymore. At 8:33 on the dot, the house lights dimmed, not gradually, instantly, like a hand flipped a God switch somewhere deeper than any booth. The entire room went dark, except the stage, which came alive under a golden wash of light I didn't cue. The girls walked out in rows. Same uniforms, same silence. Their faces blank, their motions choreographed with razor precision. Even their eye movements were timed. You could have set a watch to their blinks. I looked out at the audience again, expecting at least some kind of reaction. A nod, a twitch, a smile. But what I saw stopped my breath mid-inhale. They weren't watching the stage. They were mirroring it. I don't mean reacting. I mean copying. If a girl on stage smiled, someone in the audience smiled in the exact same way. If a girl tilted her head 14 degrees to the right, so did the man in the third row. One of the girls blinked, and half the room blinked with her, on beat, like they were tethered to the same invisible script. I looked down at the control panel. The screen was scrolling without input, line after line. Phase check, mirror sync acceptable. Facial memory match, row 2A, 96%. Subject ID, Opal, cycle 5, instance 3, proceed. My throat tightened. The performance continued, but it didn't feel like a show. There was no plot, no narration, no music. Just girls moving through programmed emotion. A simulated memory of something that hadn't happened yet, or maybe had happened too many times to matter anymore. And then she appeared. Not through the side door, not from backstage. She simply stepped out from the shadows behind the curtain, as if she'd been stitched into the fabric itself and had just now unzipped. She was wearing the same uniform. Not an adult version, not a tailored homage. The exact same outfit the girls wore. Pleated skirt, blue sash, white socks down to the hair ribbon. And it fit her. Not just physically, energetically. The air shifted. The audience didn't react, not with surprise, not with recognition, but some part of me felt it, like an old scar pressed from the inside. She walked to the center of the stage. The girls froze behind her, mid-pose, one hand raised, one foot turned in, breath held. Oprah didn't address the audience. She didn't nod to the booth. She just looked straight ahead and said, quiet but clear enough for the speakers to catch, "When they see you, they forget. When they see me, they remember." I wanted to stop the lights. I wanted to black the whole room out, but the board was frozen. The screen had changed again. Phasey version initiated. Girls 7 failed recall detected. The lights flickered, not like a power surge, like a stutter in memory, like the system was hiccuping through its own playback. For a half second, the screen cut to black, then returned. But now the girl in position 7 was no longer in sync. Her body jerked, a shoulder raised too high, her foot turned the wrong direction, her smile cracked. Not disappeared, cracked, like a mask that had dried and split. The audience twitched. Not everyone, just those who had been mirroring her. They shuddered. One woman's neck snapped to the side violently, then righted itself. A man in the front row exhaled too sharply and then sucked the air back in, like he was rewinding his own breath. The screen kept flashing. Girl 7 failed recall. Override pending. R/RN. My hand moved toward the input, hovered over the touchpad. But Oprah raised her hand, not to the audience, to me. Her eyes didn't meet mine exactly, but they landed right on the glass of the booth. She raised 2 fingers, held them still. The message on the screen changed on its own. Repeat, yes. Cycle continues. The girl who had cracked? She straightened. Her mouth twitched, reset. Her limbs loosened and then retightened like a puppet being pulled from different strings. She smiled again, this time too wide, and bowed. The audience mirrored the bow, in complete, eerie unison. The lights dimmed, the curtain closed, but again not like a traditional performance. It seemed. The moment it did, my monitor shut off. All of it. No logs, no error messages, no data. Just a single blinking phrase. You saw her, you remember. I stayed in the booth for hours after that. No one came to retrieve me, no one came to ask how it went. There were no congratulations, no applause, not a single clap had happened the entire time. I opened my notebook again. I didn't know what to write, but my hand moved anyway. I wrote, they weren't watching a performance, they were the performance. And below that, she stepped on stage to remind them who they were and who they had to be again. I've worked a lot of shows in my life, some good, some bad, but I've never worked one where the curtain closed before the actors left the stage. Until now. Chapter 5. She looked like me. I should have left that night, packed whatever I could and found the edge of the woods, even if I had to walk for hours before I saw a road. I'd thought about it, more than once, but the fear that had been pressing down on me since I first stepped into the tech booth had changed shape. It wasn't fear of what they'd do if I left. It was fear of what I might remember if I stayed. And what terrified me more than anything was that a part of me wanted to stay. Not out of curiosity, not out of duty, but out of something deeper. Something that felt like recognition. After the performance, I kept seeing her in my head. The girl with the braid, the one who stared at me during rehearsal. She hadn't danced like the others. She'd been studying me, like I was a part of the script she'd been told to follow. And when Oprah had walked on stage, the girl had turned slightly, not toward her like the rest, but toward me, as if to say, see? I stayed in the booth long after the lights cut out. I was afraid that if I moved, she'd be waiting outside. Or worse, that she wouldn't be. That she'd disappeared back into whatever system made these girls replaceable. It was past midnight when I finally stepped out. The hall's dark except for the blinking security lights. I didn't go to my room. I headed backstage, toward the corridor I now knew better than I wanted to. Past the racks, past the recovery room, past the locked archive doors. That's when I saw her. She was just there, standing at the edge of the hallway near the unlit stairwell, the braid down her back. Same uniform. Barefoot this time. The tile was cold. I could hear her skin stick with each small shift of weight. She didn't run. She didn't speak. She just looked at me with those same impossible eyes. Whispered, "What do you want?" She tilted her head. like it was a question she hadn't been taught how to answer with words. Then she stepped forward, slow and careful, until she was close enough that I could hear her breath quick, controlled, like someone practicing a line over and over under her tongue. Then she said it. "You ran lights at the old school too. You're not new." My blood stopped moving. I felt the world shift, just slightly, like gravity tilted in the wrong direction for half a second. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but no sound came out. She stared at me, like she was waiting for me to catch up. Like the line wasn't hers. Like I was the one supposed to finish it. I backed away. I didn't run, but I didn't stay long enough to ask questions either. I went straight to the one place I hadn't dared go before, the staff file room. I'd seen the door, passed it every time I moved between booth and dorm, but I'd never stopped. I figured it was just HR stuff, forms, schedules, nothing worth digging into. But now I needed answers, any kind, even the wrong ones. The door was locked, but the keypad had a manual override slot. I didn't have a key card, I didn't need one. The girl had followed me. She didn't say anything this time, just walked past me and stood beside the panel. Then she held out her hand. A folded note. Tiny, crumpled like it had been hidden under a tongue or inside a shoe for too long. I took it, unfolded it slowly. Inside, a single number. 1998. The keypad clicked open on its own after I punched it in. The room was colder than the hallway. Dustier, too. Metal shelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling, crammed with brown folders labeled in blocky, stamped ink. Each one had a date range and a department name. Performance records, replacement index, tech rotations. I found my department stack. Tech. Audio/light control. I pulled folders at random, heart hammering so loud I was afraid she might hear it from the hallway. Then I stopped. Third file in. My name, stamped in bold, uppercase standard font, just there, plain as day. Inside, a photo. Younger, but unmistakably me. Maybe mid-20s. Same face, same scar under the jawline, same slouch in the shoulders. Taken in front of the tech booth, same booth I was just sitting in a few hours ago. Dated, August 1998. I dropped the folder because I didn't remember it. Not a single frame of that version of me. Not the job, not the booth, not the photo, nothing. But someone had filed it, maintained it, preserved it, like I was a document, not a person. Like I was cycled. I wanted to run, but something inside me whispered, "You've run before." On the table in the center of the room was a box marked Child Artifacts Cycle 2. I opened it, even though I already knew what I'd find. Sketches, crumpled old paper, crayon and pen and pencil, little hands drawing what they weren't supposed to remember. The first page stopped my breath. A figure in a booth, unlabeled. The second, same figure, now clearer, male, brown jacket, scar under the jaw. The third one was in crayon, bright red, lines for the booth, blue lines for the stage, yellow lines for the eyes, Maya. And the fourth one was a perfect face, oval, smiling, calm, eyes heavy, familiar. But the mouth was not mine. It was hers, drawn wide and knowing. Oprah's smile curved gently onto my face, and underneath it, in shaky block letters, "He makes the lights do what she says." My knees went weak. I sat on the floor. The girl stood in the doorway, still watching me. I couldn't look at her anymore. I didn't want to know if she was the same one who drew it, or if she was just the next one in the line. My notebook was in my back pocket. I pulled it out and wrote the only thing I could think to write. "I think I've always been here. I just forget in between." She turned and walked away. I didn't follow, because if I did, I might find the version of me who stayed behind last time, and he might ask why I left. Chapter 6. Dress rehearsal was never over. I woke up with my shoes still on, back in the dorm room, the smell of dust in my mouth and the folds of my jacket damp with sweat. My notebook was still open beside me, but I didn't remember writing the last line. I'd scrawled it too fast, half off the page. He drew me with a smile I never wore. I needed to leave. Not because I was scared. That part was long past. What I felt now was worse. Recognition without memory. My hands knew how to flip certain switches before I thought about it. My eyes knew which monitor to look at before it lit up. I was performing too, just like the girls. Just like the audience. Just like whatever version of me had been here before. So I left the room and walked toward the exit. Not the dorm hall door, the real exit. The one past the corridor behind the recovery room. The one I'd been told never to use. I didn't care anymore. I didn't even check if anyone was watching. The hallway past the last emergency sign should have led to the back loading dock, a garage, maybe a break in the fencing. I'd mapped it in my head 100 times, but when I opened the steel door at the end of that hallway, I didn't find daylight. I found another theater, identical, seat for seat, curtain for curtain, except this one was deeper somehow. The rows stretched farther. The air was colder. The silence was louder. No audience, no girls, just the flickering stage lights, already running a sequence. My name wasn't called. There was no call sheet, no voice on the speaker, but the signs had changed. On the back wall, projected in gray light across the velvet curtain, were phrases I hadn't seen before. Playback in progress. Silence equals script compliance. Witnessing is consent. They didn't blink. They didn't move. Just hovered like they'd always been there. I tried turning back, but the door behind me was gone. I was in the booth now. I don't remember walking there. One minute I was at the aisle steps, the next I was in front of the panel, and the switch was already set to repeat. The monitor was on, but the controls were disabled. The cursor flickered gently over a single file. Our cast list memory role played. Cycle 6. I opened it. I wish I hadn't. It was short, only a few names. Most I didn't recognize, a few I did. The girl with the braid was listed only as 7A compliance pending. But one name was listed at the top. My same spelling. Same ID number from the folder in the archive. Role. Technician, Level 3, Memory Provider. There was a date next to it. Today's, and next to that a label, reinstated. I laughed. Not out loud, not real. Just this twitch in my chest that felt like a laugh should come, but couldn't. I left the booth. Not running, not sneaking. Just walking now. Through this ghost theater, past the silent stage, back into the backstage hallway that no longer looked familiar. I found the VHS room. Same cart, same camera, same unmarked tapes stacked like offerings in a forgotten shrine. I scanned the spines until I saw one that looked newer than the rest. The label was fresh ink, still drying. Boot feed cycle 6613 IMF. That was this morning. I slid it in. Static. Then a low humming tone. The video came into focus. It was me, sitting in the booth, wearing the same jacket, same posture. I was looking directly into the monitor, breathing slow, hands folded. Then I spoke. I was there. A pause, like I didn't want to say the rest. And I let it happen. Another pause. Longer. I kept the lights on. The version of me on the screen didn't move after that, just sat still. The tape kept playing for another 5 minutes. In silence, Not frozen, just waiting. I stopped the tape and turned to leave, but in the corner of the room, I noticed a mirror that hadn't been there before. Propped up against the wall, I walked to it slowly. My reflection stared back. Same face, same scar under the jaw. But something was off. The eyes were blinking out of sync. My hand twitched, and the reflection didn't. Both to the right. The reflection tilted its head left, and then it smiled. Not my smile. It was wide, knowing, familiar. I stumbled backward, knocking over a tray of tapes that scattered across the floor. When I looked back up, the mirror was gone. I checked the wall. Nothing. No frame. Just air. Back in the booth, the screen had refreshed again. New line glowed in red. Scene reset. All roles aligned. Couldn't remember if I'd pressed anything. I couldn't remember if I ever left the booth last night, or if I was still running the same light sequence. Maybe I'd never stopped. Maybe this was still the dress rehearsal. And maybe dress rehearsals don't ever really end. They just keep repeating until everyone remembers their lines, including the ones who swore they were just there to help. Chapter 7. She drew me. I didn't plan on going back to the booth. After everything with the mirror, the playback, the file with my name in it, I told myself I'd avoid that room for as long as I could. But by morning, my feet had already taken me halfway there before my brain caught up. It was like the building had rerouted itself overnight. The signs were the same. The hallways looked unchanged, but every corner bent just a little sharper than I remembered. Every floor tile clicked a little louder under my step. It wasn't just déjà vu. It was like I was moving inside a memory I hadn't made yet, and the door to the booth was open. That had never happened before. Usually it clicked shut behind me, sealed with a mechanical hiss like the whole room was airlocked. But now it stood ajar, inviting. There was something on the console. A sealed envelope, yellowed, thick. My name was written across the front, in pencil. Not typed, not stamped. Handwritten. I picked it up slowly, as if opening it too fast might activate something I wasn't ready for. Inside was a sketchbook. I recognized the cover first. It was red leather, cracked at the corners. The kind of thing you'd expect to find in a child's desk drawer, maybe stuffed behind some old homework. It had weight to it, like it had been filled for years. The first page was blank, just an indentation where a pencil had pressed down hard, maybe testing the point. The second page made my breath catch. The courtrooms. Not one I recognized right away, but the details were sharp enough to feel real. A judge's bench, rows of seats, the silhouette of a jury, but no faces. Every face had been erased, shaded over, or left blank, except one. In the back corner, behind what looked like a control panel, headset on, watching. I flipped to the next page. Same courtroom, different angle. This time I was seated, hands on a console, redacting something. The word "observe" written across a screen in front of me. My expression was neutral, too neutral. Like I'd been told how to hold it. More pages, all variations of the same theme. Different courtroom sketches, some with girls on the stand, others with curtains drawn inside the courtroom itself, like it had become a stage. In one, I was shown reaching for a light dial while a girl in the corner raised her hand, like she was about to speak, or like she had been rehearsed not to. The shading was always heaviest around me, around my hands, my eyes. The fifth page had a label scrawled at the top in shaky handwriting. Kept the room dark when she needed light. Pris said I didn't remember these scenes, that I couldn't argue with them either. Then I found the final drawing. It stopped me cold. The girl, the one with the braid. She was smiling. Not the blank stage smile, not the robotic compliance grin. A real smile, subtle, soft. But there was blood on her shoes, a thick red smear trailing across the stage beneath her, and she was closing the curtain, pulling it shut slowly with one hand. In the other, she held what looked like a folded paper, maybe another drawing, maybe a script. Above her head, written in thick, uneven lettering, probably crayon, were the words, "You never stopped the show, you only dimmed it." I stared at that drawing for a long time. Minutes, maybe, could have been hours. Then the monitor in front of me flickered. No input, no button pressed. The screen lit up with static, then began playing the performance from earlier, the one with the mirroring audience. Oprah in uniform, the girl who cracked and reset. But something was wrong. I wasn't in the booth. I was in the front row, my own face, staring at the stage, not smiling, just watching. Hands in my lap, head tilted forward, eyes wide. I was in the center seat, the same seat Oprah sat in during the rehearsal. And the me sitting in the booth now, watching it all happen again, didn't remember being there. The audio kicked in, low and distant, like it was leaking from somewhere beneath the console. The girl's voice, faint, repeating, "Take the lights on," even after. Stayed behind the curtain, aimed it, but the show didn't end. I shut the monitor off, but the image didn't go away. I unplugged the entire console, but the screen still glowed. And the sketchbook. It was still warm in my hands. I flipped back to the final drawing, looked closer. Something had changed. In the background of the stage, barely visible before. There I was again. A second version of me. This time, standing behind the curtain, watching her pull it closed, and smiling back. Not my smile. Chapter 8. Playback Pending. I'm writing this from a motel off the highway, somewhere between states. I'm not saying where. Doesn't matter. The curtains are drawn, the locks engaged, and I've unplugged the TV 3 times just to be safe. Still, it hums. The screen keeps flickering like it's waiting for a signal or a cue. I haven't slept in 2 days. I tried to leave it all behind. I really did. After the last cycle, I packed up what little I had, just clothes, cash, no ID, and walked out of that place like a man shedding skin. I didn't tell anyone, didn't check out, just slipped out into the gray morning while the guards changed shifts. I thought I was done, but it's not the kind of place you walk away from. Not when it knows your name. Not when your face is in the sketchbook. Not when you've been written into the cast list more than once. I checked into this place thinking I could shake it. Just rest for a night, maybe 2, let the weirdness drain out. Maybe tell myself it was a breakdown, a shared delusion, a trick of light and sound and exhaustion. What? Then I opened the closet, and the uniform was there. Folds folded perfectly. No wrinkles, no tag. My sides. The same pale beige, the white shirt, the blue sash, everything pressed like it had just come from wardrobe. I didn't pack it. I didn't take anything from the recovery room. I know that much. But it was waiting for me, hanging off the motel's lone plastic hanger like a threat dressed as an offering. I told myself maybe the motel just had weird laundry policies. Maybe someone left it before me. But then I found the sketchbook. In the car, passenger seat. Closed. Clean. No dust on the cover. But when I opened it, every page was filled again. Even the ones I'd seen before had changed. The drawings were darker now, smudged around the eyes. The courtroom scenes had collapsed inward. Seats melting into the floor, judges without faces, children with mouths stitched shut by drawn-on thread. And there I was in every panel, still behind the lights, still watching. Still not stopping it. I burned the book that night, but the next morning it was back. Same place, same seat. This time with a post-it note stuck to the front. Our here schedule pending. Last night, the motel TV turned on by itself. No sound at first, just a gray screen, glowing too bright for the room. I'd unplugged it earlier, I swear I had. But the plug was back in the socket, like it had never left. Then a phrase appeared. Plain white font on a black background. "It's your turn to perform." It didn't stay long, 5 seconds maybe, but I didn't need more than that, because I knew what it meant. I've been the technician, I've been the observer, I've followed cues and dimmed lights and watched the curtain fall. But no, now the stage is empty, and someone has to stand in the center. They've written me into the script, not as crew, not as staff. It's the act, the final, undeniable. And this log I'm typing now, this isn't for someone to find. This isn't evidence or warning. It's just what I've been programmed to do. Because memory needs a witness, and witnessing becomes consent. And consent is the first line in every show. The lights in this room are flickering now. I hear footsteps outside. Not heavy ones, small, measured, familiar. I was never running the lights. I was always standing in them. I wasn't the technician. I was the final act. The screen freezes. A soft click echoes from the closet. Then a child's voice, clear and steady. "Lights, please."